What is up, beast mode moms and dads? It's Christian father, husband, coach, and autism advocate, your host, Trey Turner. Welcome to the Superhero Parent Pod, a voice for the voiceless and a lending ear for all those who feel like they're struggling alone. This is the safe place where each week we go behind the scenes and enter into a world that most people have no clue even exists. So welcome, sit back, and enjoy the untold stories now told of strengths, struggles, blessings, and one never-ending journey of parenting a child with special needs. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Superhero Parent Pod. This is episode 6, interview number 4, I believe, with Miss Kristi Bryant. Kristi, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you for responding and being transparent and vulnerable. And this will be the first podcast that we've done where I actually do not have a history or background with a person. Both of us have a mutual friend in Amberly, so I'm going to be learning just as much as everyone else that's going to be listening.
Oh, good. Good.
And so the superhero we are going to be talking about today is Miss Leslie. That's correct?
Mm-hmm. Miss Leslie.
And she's 23?
Yes.
And so between you and, is it your fiance, husband?
He's my husband.
You all have 6 kids together?
Yes.
So Leslie, the only one with special needs, are on the spectrum? Yeah. Gotcha. So y'all have got your hands full for sure.
Yeah, we do. They're all growing up though, and like getting bigger. So we only have 2 that are still in high school. The rest of them are like grown ups. They're in college and whatnot. So
I would have never guessed you don't look that old.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
No, I was thinking you had like 10, 11-year-olds or something maybe.
My baby is 15. She'll be 16 in January. So.
Gotcha. I had no clue. You definitely don't look that old.
Well,
and where are y'all located from originally?
We're in Independence, Kentucky. We're in northern Kentucky near Cincinnati.
Okay. So yeah, it's close to my neck of the woods.
Okay.
That's where you originally grew up?
No, I originally grew up in Greenup County, Kentucky.
Gotcha.
Which is, not here. That's normally people pick up on my accent, especially around here, because it's closer to, you're looking
Appalachia.
closer to Appalachia, West Virginia, those areas.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that, except opposite. I'm from northern Kentucky, and down here, the people are just the opposite. And they even some of them call me a Yankee. I'm like, I'm not a Yankee.
That's funny.
Yeah, but they've got a much more southern, longer drawl here than I didn't even realize that I was talking different.
Oh, I know. There's certain things that my husband will say. He'll say, "What'd you say again?" And if it's a long vowel in it, it took me a little while to figure out that he just wanted to hear me say it again. So I was like, "Oh,
yeah."
Okay.
He thought it was cute.
And oddly enough, Leslie actually has my southern accent, and
that's awesome.
Never grew up a day
that's
in
awesome.
Greenup County, so it is kind of cute.
And so, is she your oldest, or what?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, she's my oldest.
She's your oldest.
Yeah.
And she was diagnosed before the age of 3, I'm going to assume?
Yeah, she about 2.5 is when we got a formal diagnosis. Although between 15 and 18 months, I noticed a marked difference in Leslie. She lost all of her communication skills. And, between 15 and 18 months, it's not like they're like talking sentences to you, but they can communicate with you. Yeah. But I watched her evolve over those months, and I was very adamant with our pediatrician at 18 months that there was
something
definitely
was going on.
Something. Yeah.
It was just her communication skills. That was the first red flag.
And her focus. She had a very limited focus on what she wanted to have a focus on.
Yeah.
We would line up toys. She would sort things by color and by frequency. So if you would give her like M&Ms or something like that, she would first put them in, like she would group them by color, and then she would group them by least to most. She didn't eat them. She played with them. And she would do really interesting things with, we had tile floor in our house, and she would take a ball and she would put it over her head in the same spot. And I mean, this was an 18-month-old kid.
Yeah.
And she would let it fall, and she would see like where it landed on the floor. And she would take a goldfish and put the goldfish where the ball landed, and then go back to the next square over and do the same thing. I mean, she'd do it forever. And so I'm just like,
wow.
As much as I enjoy this, I also know that it's just not. Yeah, and she had a really hard time separating from me. We really noticed that between that 15 and 18 month where she wouldn't go to anyone else, and she would give them really mean looks. Like, I have tons of pictures of her, like, real dirty looks at people because she just didn't.
She
I
didn't
don't.
know.
She didn't. Yeah, and she
Yeah.
didn't. She didn't want to have to communicate with them. So.
I think it's cool hearing about the first signs of other parents, even though it's sad in some ways, but it is cool to hear some of the things that your kid, just the broad, all of it has a central point around some type of organization or
Yeah.
colors or routine, doing something repetitive. But as far as the stories behind all of that, like Isaiah's got some that people will be like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Exactly. Like, what? Yeah.
Yeah.
Leslie would do some of the craziest things. She's a day after Christmas baby. So, when we had all gathered for like Thanksgiving and all of that stuff with our family, and she just had some really different mannerisms, not the first Thanksgiving that we all spent together, because she wasn't quite a year old, but by the next one, when
Yeah.
she was when she was older, it was kind of evident that she, just had a different agenda than the rest of us did.
Yeah.
It wasn't, she didn't want to really participate in any of our games or things we wanted to do. It was very much on her terms. So.
Did she have to have certain doors shut or lights on or off or any of that, or not? Didn't matter?
Not really. To be honest, as she got a little bit older, like, how most kids will sleep with like a fan or a nightlight or something. She wanted pitch black and
really. That's
silence.
That's the way Isaiah is. He'll tuck himself in his cocoon of blankets.
Yes.
To where he can't like breathe, but it's just so he'll block out all the color.
And and I would always think that was so odd, because I'm like, I've got 2 fans going, I've got a TV on, I've got all kinds of stuff. I like the noise. I always have. Yeah. And she wanted it like so quiet.
Yeah.
Very odd. But
so did you all get her diagnosed by what type of special pediatrician or?
Well, we did our pediatrician. She was great. I had been a nanny in college for a family. So I was already really familiar with that pediatrician because I had been their nanny from the time they were born. And so she and I had pretty good rapport with each other already. And she went ahead and recommended that we go to the Kelly O'Leary Center and Dr. Patricia Manning, which if you're in Cincinnati, you've heard that name.
Yeah.
She is actually the one who diagnosed Leslie and started Leslie with therapy and everything else that came after.
That's where she received the therapy as well?
Yeah, and then, so we were in Kentucky. So Kentucky has the First Steps program.
That's what
where they will bring them into your home. And at that point in time, that was much more comfortable for Leslie to like invite people into our home, because once we went out for something, she was just off her routine. There was too much going on, too much stimulus that she wasn't. It just worked a lot better if they came to our home.
Yep.
Which hosted its own problems as well sometimes, because when she would get to the point of, she got to where she didn't really want to participate with what they wanted her to do. And so when she did start to learn a little bit of stuff, she would bye-bye, like as soon as they walked in the door. I'm like,
that's what Isaiah does and still does the same thing. If he doesn't like you or wants you to go away, he'll say that.
Yeah.
And
bye-bye.
Or he'll say to the door, or go to the door or something, or so-and-so leave. And it's, if you're like not used to it, it can, if you can't wear your emotions on your shoulder or sleeve around them.
No, that's what I was like,
very blunt.
You couldn't get you couldn't let your feelings get hurt. She just, she's little. She just didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah. And so that was at 2.5 that she got diagnosed. And then therapy started immediately.
Therapy actually started before she got a diagnosis.
Oh, okay.
We were really lucky in the fact that because she had the deficit, she actually went ahead and qualified for some services, preventative services in our county for their preschool program. So she actually was able to start getting services closer to 2 than 2.5. And I know that's silly to say that 6 months made a big difference, but
it does.
I wholeheartedly believe that 6 months made a really big difference.
Yeah, we started Isaiah before he was 3 in preschool, and it was like heartbreaking at the time. But it's like, I tell everybody, start, if you know something's up, Start them early. Don't wait till
Not
they're
gonna hurt anything. I
yeah.
mean, it's just not gonna hurt anything if you start them at 2 versus at 3, or just the moment that you kind of feel something's off. Any help that you can get, I always tell people,
Yeah.
just take it. Just do it, because
So
it does make a big difference.
was you surprised at all when they told you
No.
you was ready for it?
Yeah, oddly enough, my next door neighbor when I was in, high school, my next door neighbor was autistic, young boy, and
So you'd been around it.
yeah, and my grandmother, she was a teacher's aide for, well, we're the special education kids
Yep.
in Greenup County. And so I always, this is kind of been passed down to my kids, honestly, but I ate every lunch. I ate like with the special ed kids
That's
because
awesome.
they were my friends, and
They were
they
your
were
people.
like,
Yeah.
they were my people, and I loved them and I cherished them. And so things happen for a reason. And I would always venture to say that Leslie came to me not by chance. So
Yeah. It was for a purpose.
yeah, absolutely.
Did you look at it, or maybe always did you always look at it as a blessing, or did that not
Oh
come as
no.
not come not come as easy,
No.
or still doesn't maybe?
You know what? There are times like now it's a little bit different, but I did go through all of that because my best friend and I were pregnant at the same time with our daughters.
Yeah.
And I would see like her daughter doing this and
Yep.
all of these fun things. And then, Leslie just didn't follow that same path. She didn't do those same things. She did remarkable things, but they weren't some of the things that their daughters did. So
Right.
it was, is very lonely. And there were times that I thought, oh, you know, I wish she were more typical. But then there are also times I'm like, I'm so glad she's not typical because
Yes.
I don't want to deal with
The,
that.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
There. Us being around other kids, it does make me appreciate Isaiah at times.
Yeah.
Even like times that I'll get overwhelmed at like large crowds or something, and sometimes
Yeah.
Isaiah can just block it out and like
Yeah.
act like it's not there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, I wish I could do that. Or like just around rude people or people, he's never going to know
Mm-mm.
if somebody's going to hurt his feelings or anything.
No,
Um, and
absolutely not.
stuff like that, it kind of makes me jealous. But then I also see kids, siblings or other people not getting along and fighting. Like
Yeah, no.
Isaiah, if my daughter wanted a toy from him, he'd just let her have it.
Yeah.
There's never been that concern.
Now, see, Leslie had a very hard time, and that was like I went ahead and put her in preschool because
Yeah.
she didn't have any siblings at the time. So it's very hard for me to make her learn to share and
Yeah.
cooperate with other people if she didn't have any other people to cooperate
Yeah.
with. So, because everyone in her life just, kind of gave her what she wanted. So,
Yeah.
at one point, I thought this probably is not the best setup for this child to succeed in life. So I
Yeah.
put her in preschool, and she was the only autistic kid, or she was the first autistic kid that they'd actually had in their preschool. And so I had to do a lot of observing and kind of teaching them. And then they also got to the point to where they let her therapist come in, and
It's good.
her therapists were great, and they worked with the people in the preschool, and the people in the preschool learned a whole lot about how to better, educate themselves also on what it's like to care for a child on the spectrum. So I was really blessed and very lucky in those ways.
That
But,
was that
because
she was the first one that they'd really been around.
yeah, yeah. The people had always heard things, and I'm sure you've always heard, like, you don't see many 20 years ago.
That's what I was
You,
getting ready
yeah,
to say. You took the words
you,
right out of my mouth.
yeah, you didn't see it. And a lot of people would the only reference they would have is to Rain Man. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm always like, maybe she has some Rain Man qualities,
But
but she's nothing like that.
yeah, every single one's different.
Exactly, way different, but,
Yeah. I can't
she
I
taught them a lot too.
I can't think of, my high school class, or maybe one. I mean, but we didn't know what autism was. Maybe one of
Yeah,
the kids, and that was just a maybe, but there was nobody in my class was holding their ears or
yeah,
beating their heads on the wall or, flapping their
yeah, you
hands.
didn't.
There was none of that.
Yeah, now in my high school, like I said, I was very involved with the kids that were, in special ed, which I'll say it that way because that's just how it was.
Yeah.
Um, but I never, like, I can look back now and say, oh, I guarantee what was going on with him. He had to have been on the
Yeah.
autism spectrum.
Yeah.
But yeah, you would just, oh, they're slow. Well,
Yeah.
that's not what that they really probably had a real diagnosis. And but yeah, for the most part, I would almost guess, and most of them were boys, and I would almost 100% guess every one of them were on the spectrum.
Yep. Yep.
So,
And again, back then, like people just didn't know.
and people weren't nice to them. They were weird, and they were
Judgmental.
they were dumb.
Yeah.
And if you would actually have a conversation with them, they absolutely were not. They were some of
No.
the, I mean, they
Some of
were
the smartest people there.
absolutely just some of
Yep.
the most brilliant people, and they just were socially awkward. They didn't care what they wore to school.
Yep.
I mean, they didn't care a bit more than anything, and I embrace that with them, and I'm glad I did that.
I wish I'd been exposed to that more. I wasn't like rude or mean or anything, but I was, I guess, almost standoffish.
Yeah, because it was unknown.
It was unknown, and I wish I had more exposure to it earlier on, because I think gifted is what our term was. They're gifted.
Yeah.
Or the gifted class, maybe, I can't remember. But yeah, it was made to look like they were different. That's what was programmed into our minds. And until Isaiah, I didn't know any different, really.
Right. And were they mainstreamed in the regular classroom, or were they like out in a trailer? Like at our school,
Yes,
they were all out in a trailer.
Yeah, that's kind of what it was. They had some interactions with the normal class, but yeah, they had like a completely separate room. Yeah.
Yeah, like they would put them in PE with all the regular kids, and all the boys would be mean to them, and which made no sense. But again, I mean, it's just something they didn't know anything about back then. So my grandmother was always very wonderful with them. So that was sort of the exposure that I got with it.
You have to have, there's something that I think God just gives you to have that knack to be a teacher or helper or therapist or whatever. Cause I would probably be an alcoholic. I don't know if I could do
it. There's some of it. I'm just like, ooh, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how much of that I could do.
And especially Isaiah, like he does therapy on Thursday nights all the way till 6 p.m. He gets out at 6 and the therapist is still there, but they just come out just beat bopping around, and like all enthusiastic, and
they love it.
Yeah.
And they have to. I mean, I've met some just amazing people through Leslie,
Yeah.
And it's obviously she's my oldest. So then I have my son. So I had my kids all 4 years apart. So I have a son that's 19, because Leslie will actually be 24 the day after Christmas. So I have a son who is 19, and he had like ADD, ADHD, whatever. I think every boy does anymore. But of course, he learned differently, and he had sensory integration disorder. So we did have to get him some help. But as far as being on like the spectrum, I swear, I think he started to talk and communicate when he was 9 months old. He spoke full sentences, and it wasn't normal to see something that little that could converse with you as well as he did.
Did it make you sad seeing him do that, and then knowing the gap between Leslie?
You know what's funny about it? There were times that it made me sad, but they played together so well, because she would still play with, like, because she was kind of immature for her age. So she would still very much play with him the way that he wanted to play. And she's always been just a vivid imagination. And she loved to play with him. Whereas I think if she had been typical, I think he probably would have gotten on her nerves.
Probably. Yeah.
He probably did get on her nerves. I'm sure he did. But I would they were born in the same years as the John and Kate plus 8 kids. Yeah. I don't know if you have ever heard of that.
I barely remember the show. Yeah.
So they had twins that were Leslie's age. And then they had the 6 babies that were Luke's age. And people would we would be talking about it. And I would say, I would reverse that. I could have had 6 of Leslie and only 2 of Luke, because where I was so used to Leslie, I mean, everything. There's no way that a fork would ever go into an electrical outlet with Leslie. A fork was for eating. Luke, on the other hand, that fork would go in that electrical outlet, no problem. So all of those things I hadn't had to deal with.
You knew what to expect.
Out
of
Luke,
her, but not
exactly.
with him.
Everything was very practical. She never, if something was intended to be used one way, it was absolutely used that way.
That's what has to be done. Yeah, that way forever.
Exactly. And it was so funny, because I had to call poison control on him 2 times in one day. And that was one of those times where I'm like, Leslie would have never drank an air freshener out of the
Yeah.
wall. She would have never picked that up and put it in her.
Yeah.
Like she would have never eaten a Lego head to see where it comes out. Like,
Yeah.
just would not have ever happened.
Yeah.
But he was more of a challenge than she was when it comes to that.
Yeah. I think my daughter would normally get on Isaiah's nerves if he wasn't autistic.
Probably. Yeah,
'Cause
Leslie just tuned him out.
that's what he
Yeah.
does, and she can just yell and act silly, and it
Yep.
gets on our nerves. We're like,
Exactly.
would you? And he's just over there, doesn't even bother him.
Yeah, she still does that to this day.
Yeah.
They don't really grow out of that.
Was there any jealousy or bitterness or resentment growing up between the siblings, seeing Leslie getting praised or more attention? I know that's something we struggle with. Isaiah does something small and we compliment him for it, and like,
Well, right. And I will say I feel like I did a pretty good job with my younger ones to let them, they understand that we celebrate really small stuff,
Yeah.
with Leslie. And I would go out of my way to celebrate really small stuff with them as well. But what I learned was they figured it out pretty quick that Leslie was different and that they encourage her in the same ways, and they love their sister. They embrace their sister. They don't feel sorry for their sister at all.
Yeah.
Like they
just treat her like a normal.
They just treat her like a normal sister.
Yep.
Her brother will still to this day, he knows what things will kind of get her kind of fired up, and he'll purposefully start talking about it, and they're 19 and 23. And then, the 15-year-old will die laughing because she knows certain things they get talking about. So, but they've always, I don't think they've ever, and we've been pretty open and honest about it, but I don't think they've ever felt slighted or jealous or anything like that.
That's awesome. That's good. I don't know. Maybe she doesn't, but I can just pick up if we'll compliment or say something to Isaiah completely unrelated. Maybe a few minutes later, my daughter's trying to do something to like get that
right
same,
to get some attention too.
And we're like, Larry Grace, you don't have to impress us, honey. Like you're, like you do so much amazing things, but still, it's like she's kind of seeking that same attention a little bit.
Exactly. What's the age difference between them?
Isaiah's 7 and she's 5.
Okay. A little less of a gap there. So I honestly think because of the age difference between mine, I think that really did help as far as that goes.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So the 3 from your husband, are they around the same age as your 3 as well?
Yeah, well, his oldest is 25, so he's a man. He's out on his own and everything. But he was only 16 when we met, so he was younger. He and Leslie are actually very close in age, and they were they've always been really close. Those two
awesome.
have. He's a sweetheart. He's always very much embraced her. And then his daughters, actually, his oldest daughter is 1 day older than my son, so they were always really close.
What a coincidence! Yeah,
I know. Isn't that funny? I'm like, we were in the hospital having
together.
Babies. Yeah, at the same time.
Yeah.
And then his youngest, she is 17. So, she's getting ready. She's going to graduate high school early and everything. And they've always very much embraced Leslie. Now, I will say Leslie is really she's never really gotten super close to them as she because she was older. Now, they did ask a lot of interesting questions about Leslie. And
that's probably typical.
Yes.
It's good that they ask.
It's very good. But, I think sometimes they're afraid to ask questions and hey, why would she say this? Or, hey, what's this mean? But my husband's favorite story to tell is the very first time they were all going to meet each other, because I was single and trying to date, it's not the funnest thing to do. But when he and I had known each other for a little while, and then when we actually decided we wanted to meet, or wanted our kids to meet, we get them together. We're going to do pizza and a movie and just kind of chill or whatever. And so Leslie, of course, is asking me, I don't know what to talk to them about, Mom. And I said, well, honey, you talk to people about things you have in common. And I'm thinking that you have she loves Disney movies and she loves Pixar, and she those are the kinds of things that she normally will talk to people about. That's her favorite thing to talk to people about. Well, this was the one time that she pivot, big time pivot on that one. And this was about 11 years ago. So she was 12, something like that. Yeah. And Abby was 8. Leslie was 12. So Leslie comes and meets up with Abby, which is Jim's daughter. And Abby had headphones on, thank goodness, and had no clue that Leslie was actually talking to her.
Yeah.
So Leslie, and it takes a lot out of them to start a conversation with anyone. For her, it really was, especially someone she didn't know or she just met.
Yeah.
So she was like, so, huh, Abby? And, Abby like looked at her, like made eye contact with her. And she said, so, how do you feel about your parents being divorced? I'm like,
did anybody else hear?
That in common? Well, just my husband and I heard it. We were like, oh wait, whoa.
All right, let's start over.
Yeah. And Abby was like this, like, what? And we were like, it's okay. Nothing.
Talking about the weather. That's
but
awesome.
I'm like, the one time the kid pivots, normally it's like, hey, who's your favorite Disney princess? Or who's like, those are givens. Yeah.
So I don't know if I should tell this story, but recently he was on vacation, and Isaiah gets enjoyment out of watching other people like go down slides, like water slides. Like he watches video on YouTube of just people going down water slides. Even to the point, like if we're at a pool at a hotel or whatever, he'll just stick his head down and just stand at the bottom and watch.
Just wants to watch.
Watch the kid. Yeah. So if there was a few teenage boys and Isaiah, and he was just loving it. He was jumping up and down happy. One of the teenage boys was very overweight, was very obese, just to put it mildly. He had some problems. I felt bad for him. But, he's going down the slide, and Isaiah's like, make a mighty splash, make a mighty splash. And he's telling us that, and that boy's not paying any attention. Well, then the boy got out, and he was like ready to be done. And Isaiah, he just tells it how it is, very descriptive. He said, the big boy, get back on the slide. Big boy. And we're like, Isaiah, shut up. And he's like, big boy, get the big boy. Like, yeah. And he's like looking around, and we're like, oh my gosh. And he was trying to describe the boy that he wanted to get back on the slide.
That was the best descriptive word he knew at the time.
Yeah. We're like, Isaiah, shh. And that guy was kind of looking around. But there's been a few other times like that where you're like, God has a sense of humor. He has to.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We have a friend of mine she's really, really tall. She's very tall.
Yeah.
And which I'm only like 5'1". So most people are tall compared to me with Leslie. She looked at my friend when she met her, and she looked her up and down, and she goes, you're huge. She didn't know that like tall wasn't the word she knew, but she's like, she just knew huge.
She was bigger than she was.
Exactly.
Yeah. That is hilarious.
You can't take it personal.
No, not at all. And sometimes, I don't know if she does, but like Isaiah has almost like a sixth sense ability to detect, almost like when a dog kind of sniffs you out. And if it likes you, like if you're a good person, it'll let you pet it kind of deal.
Yeah.
Isaiah kind of has the ability to like sniff out other people's bull crap, or if they're a good or bad person. Like, I don't know what you call it, but I mean, I guess just because they judge from the heart and know.
Yeah.
But there's been a few times where he's done that. And then later on, we find out that person actually was a bad person, and we're like, how did he, he knew that back then.
How did you know that? Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, believe me, Leslie has called that out several times too on people.
And so from preschool to high school, biggest struggles, triumphs, and I guess hold off on the one you text me about, still true, right?
Which one? I'm like, I could have written you a book about that one.
No, well, we'll just go ahead and say it. So the driving test.
Yes.
Yeah. So
she did get her driver's license.
Okay. So I guess start out with a triumph then. How recent was that?
Oh, that was just like 2 weeks ago. I mean, it was a really big deal. Even to try, like, the anxiety of driving, like, it's anxiety riddled for me to drive. Yeah. So I never, we kind of talked about it when she was 16, and she just never she didn't want to. Like, it wasn't a big deal to her at all. Well, then when she turned 18, she did take the permit test a couple of times, and she failed it. And it was she thought she was timed. So she panicked.
Trying to rush through it.
Yeah. And so then we explained to her it's not timed.
Yeah.
So then she went into the next one, just very nervous. Again, and even on the driving, even the permit test now, there are certain questions they will ask you that they kind of try to trick you.
They try that. I failed my first one. I missed one more question and there were some of them that you had to think like, what did they ask? Yeah.
There was one about like if a dog runs out in front of you, and I think the right answer was like hit the dog. Well, she's never going to pick that. I'm sorry. Yeah, she's just never going to pick that answer.
Yeah.
So all
The
I could hope is that she didn't get that question on the next time. But then when her brother turned 16 and when he wanted to get his permit and everything, he's so sweet. He really worked with her and really encouraged her, like, we'll study together. And if I can do it, you can do it, Leslie. And, let's just do it. We like, you've got this, sis. And so he got his, of course, he got his on the first try.
yeah.
And then she actually went and took it again and she failed it again. And he was like, nope, that's not, he goes, you go right back in there and you're going to take it again. Like, he made her make an appointment for the next day and she passed it. And that was such a big deal to even get her permit.
Yeah.
Like, it was just such a big deal. And then she sort of lost
Interest in
that.
it.
She just wanted to say she had a permit. Like, she didn't really care if she could drive or not.
Yeah.
So then when she went away, which is probably a spoiler alert, to the Disney College program.
Wow. Yep.
Um, yes. When she went away to the Disney College program, they have transportation there for the kids that are in the program. So she had so much independence to be able to go where she wanted to go and do what she wanted to be able to do without a car and without a driver's license. But when she came home from that year, from that experience, she then relied on mom to get everywhere again.
Yeah.
So and she's pretty gung ho on going back there to work. So,
That's
we set a
awesome.
goal that, we're within a year, you're going to have your driver's license.
Yep.
And so she's practiced and practiced, and we've had ups and downs with it. And she came back in January of this year. And so just a couple weeks ago, she got her driver's license. So
Congratulations. That's
well on her
awesome.
way to her goal.
Yeah. And proving what most people think can't be possible,
Exactly.
proving them wrong.
I always tell her, you can do anything that anybody else can do if you want to. You don't have to do what everybody else does. If it takes you longer, it's fine. It's not a race. Who cares if you got your driver's license at 23 versus 16? It doesn't change your life at all.
Yeah, just the fact that she did it is an
Yep.
accomplishment.
Yep.
So,
Tonight we just sent her to Taco Bell to grab food for my 15-year-old. So
that
they're
does sound
loving
good
the
right
fact
now.
that hey, sis can go and do this and go and do that now. But from that preschool kid that to now, I've always kind of hoped that I would have this with her.
Yeah.
Never really thought that it would come to fruition, because she did really, really struggle with communication and relationships with people.
Yeah.
But then she is one of those people, even when she was young, that the moment she lets you in to like her little world, then you're sucked in. That's all you want to do is help that kid.
Yeah.
And we've been absolutely blessed with wonderful teachers. And I mean, all through school, and people who, really, really wanted her to succeed and thought outside of the box anytime they could to get her.
That tribe
Yes.
you have is everything.
Oh, it absolutely is. And that really has been our like saving grace with her. Is we've just really had a great road of people that have, we've had a few people here and there that, weren't the nicest.
You're gonna have that.
I had a principal one time. Leslie used to be obsessed with Tom and Jerry, and I don't know if I told you, she very much like had echolalic speech, or she would script. So she wouldn't necessarily know what things to say. So if in the grocery store somebody would say, "Oh, you're cute. What's your name?" and she would go, "Buzz Lightyear."
That's Isaiah.
"Where do you live?" Sector 12 of whatever. She would, full on.
Yep.
Like she was in character.
Yes,
they had no earthly idea. Yeah,
that's how Isaiah talks. He talks in scripting.
And that's Leslie. To this day, we will I can have full conversations. Our entire family really can, to be honest.
Yep.
In SpongeBob SquarePants.
It's
words.
like learning. You have to learn another language.
It's a different language.
I've had to learn Daniel Tiger, Muppet Babies, Puppy Dog Pal. What's the other one? Paw Patrol.
Patrol, yeah.
Language. Yeah. And each time Isaiah's saying one of the lines, he knows exactly what he's meaning.
Right. And sometimes it's very applicable. Like it,
yeah.
There were times that Leslie would say certain things, like, for instance, her shoes were too small. Well, most kids will tell you, hey, my shoes are too tight, or but she didn't have that vocabulary to tell me those kinds of things when she was about 4.
Yeah.
she would take a step and she would go, "There's a snake in my boot." She would take another
Yeah.
step and go, "There's a snake in my boot." And I'm thinking, we are never going to get out the door with this
Yeah.
kid. And so finally she kept, she just kept doing it. And so I'm like, "Okay, is there something in your shoe? Let's look at your shoe." And when I took it off of her foot, I thought, there's so much foot here. Like,
Yeah.
how did your feet grow this much? I didn't even notice it. So
That's what she was trying to tell you.
she was trying to tell me
Yeah.
she didn't like the way that her shoes felt.
Yeah.
So we had to get new shoes that day.
That's
And
hilarious.
yeah, it was, but there were just lots of times that she was really, really good at giving me a line from a movie or something. And then the very first movie, because she's been obsessed, Toy Story was her. I mean, that child was obsessed. She
Yeah.
still really is with Toy Story. Well, then I got to the point to where I thought she would love to go to like the movie theater. So we went to go see Finding Nemo. And I waited until it was like a Tuesday, like noon,
Yeah.
where there'd be
So
like
nobody'd be
nobody
there.
else there.
Yep.
Right. Because she wanted to be as close to the screen as she could and still see it. Like that
Yep.
was her big thing. So she loved Finding Nemo, which I loved Finding Nemo too. It's just,
Yeah.
it's a very good movie, especially when you have kids with special needs. So after we'd seen that movie, we were at therapy, and they had put her in physical therapy, and she kept doing this. And so, a lot of kids like flap. And they were like, "Oh, is that new?" And I said, "That is very new." Like,
she's imitating something.
And she kept doing this and kept doing this and kept doing that. And I'm like, "What is that?" And so finally I heard her playing, and she was like, it was her lucky fin. Well, if you remember in Nemo, he had one fin.
Yeah.
That was fine. And the other one was tiny because it had been injured when all that stuff happened. So it was his lucky fin. And so but that's what she was doing. She was swimming with her lucky fin at all times. Eventually she stopped doing it. But, again, it's those kind of mannerisms that if I weren't so close to her and so immersed in her world, they probably wouldn't have ever figured that out.
And nobody would know. Yeah. Isaiah has, if I'm not with him, there's like people think he means one thing. I'm like, you have no idea. Like Fozzie's hat. They'll say Fozzie's hat, and they're like, "Oh, you want a hat? Like you want to put on a hat?" Fozzie's hat means he can't reach something. Yeah. Because Fozzie loses his hat over the fence, and they can't reach over to get it.
And they can't reach it. Right.
Yeah, and so it's Fozzie's hat. But like if I wasn't there, that wouldn't know. And then when he reenacts, there's a certain scene, I think from Muppet Babies again, but he has to just face plant at one point. And it doesn't matter if he's doing this scene at the beach in the dirt. It's a face plant, and he'll just put his head down in the sand and then get up, and his whole face is covered, and then he just keeps reenacting it. Or at gymnastics, he'll go and lay down and take a nap on a mat halfway through the gymnastics, and they're like, "Oh, I can't believe Isaiah's tired," but he'll pretend like he's sleeping and go, "It's not nap time, it's play time."
Exactly.
And he's reenacted. They get a kick out of it, and I'm like,
yeah.
He does. This is him at home, like 24/7.
Exactly. That's how Leslie always was. It was. I mean, everything was like. She never just said something. Like it was normally there was a reason behind it, or there was always something, or like whatever toy she had, or whatever, whatever scenario those toys were in. I would always be like, I don't know what's going on here today, but these two were no longer talking to each other. So I'd have to figure out like who represented who.
Yeah. Could she communicate if she felt bad or if she was sick?
Mm-mm.
No.
Still to this day, she doesn't.
Isaiah the same way. Until recently, he started saying, and it's not all the time, he'll say, "Are you okay?" He's asking you.
Right, but it's because he doesn't feel well.
It actually means, and he's just started that recently, but still he has to be like a really bad boo-boo or something. But we didn't even know, like there was times he had the flu, I think, and we didn't even know it. Yeah.
Leslie and I both had the swine flu when that was out all those years ago. And my youngest was an infant. So Leslie and I were quarantined together with the swine flu. Again, I tested positive for it because I felt bad. Yeah. And so I immediately went to school and got her. And sure as the world, she had like a super high fever. She was so sick, but we would have never known it.
It's crazy how tough, like it's like they have like some literally like a superpower. Isaiah's been like kicked hard right in the face before, like to bring tears to your eyes, and he gets up and starts laughing like about something. I'm like, how is that even possible?
Yeah, there will be like Leslie has like I don't know if Isaiah deals with like eczema and different kind of skin conditions, and she
No,
has a
not,
really hard time with like eczema.
yeah,
Um, but she when I went to go see her at her at Disney College, she had she like her hands were like covered in this rash, this
ugh,
really itchy rash, and I said, "Honey, does that hurt?" And she
yeah.
was like, "Yeah."
Thanks for asking.
Have you told
Nobody,
anyone or if you
yeah,
showed anyone? Nope. It's like, okay, well, we're
yeah,
going to,
that's, yeah,
it's just, and even I'll say, like, just there are times that, like, so she had COVID a couple years ago.
yeah,
And I say, because I tested positive for it. And I'm thinking, well, she probably has it if I have it. And I say, Leslie, do you feel okay? And she was like, well, I kind of feel like I'm floating always. Like sometimes that's a good feeling,
yeah,
but
but
not
not all the
normally. And
time.
again,
Yeah,
really high fever, really hard. Like she was like, well, it's very hard to breathe. It feels like somebody's sitting on me. I'm like, okay, well, you should tell me when those things happen. But
yeah,
yeah,
no,
she still is notoriously bad at explaining to me what feels bad.
yeah,
And that's at 23. And we
yeah,
have a really good doctor who he still allows me to come in the room and talk to him about what's going on with her and stuff. And he,
right,
he gets her input too, but then sometimes he'll kind of look at me like, okay, so if I ask her these questions, she's not really going to know what I'm asking. So,
yeah.
and he's very good about being collaborative about that.
You're part translator.
Absolutely. I
Yeah,
mean, I speak very fluent Leslie.
yeah.
Always have.
The our doctor, our pediatrician, he makes a joke all the time. He's about Isaiah. He's like, you don't want to send him to college. And we're like, why? He said he's going to be a big partier. He said because he can puke. Because he said he can puke and run. Uh, He will. Isaiah, if he's sick, he'll just blah, and just
And just go.
keep on going. He's done it at the doctor's office before, like
Oh my gosh.
while he was there sick. But yeah, Dr. Chris always is like, y'all don't might want to keep him home from college. He's gonna be a pretty bad party. He can puke and run.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yeah,
Yeah, Leslie wouldn't party a bit more than anything. Leslie's very strict with times.
yeah,
We have a time that we wake up. We have a
yeah,
time like everything is on a schedule. It always has been.
yeah,
She's always been that way.
yeah,
And she is still that way. She
yeah.
recently announced to us that she changed her bedtime from 10:30 to 11 p.m. That
It's a big
was that
deal.
okay
Yeah,
if she stayed up an extra half hour?
yeah.
Like,
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yes. We'll have to think about it.
Exactly. And she,
Yeah.
for a long time, like, of course, the other kids grew up with a bedtime because they had no choice. Everyone had a bedtime with
Yeah.
Leslie. And, but God love my youngest one. I mean, she would go to bed at 8:30 religiously because that's when Leslie was like, according to your age, stats were everywhere. According to your age,
You need
you should
it.
be going to bed at this time. And you should
That's
be going to bed
hilarious.
at this time. And I'm like,
Yeah.
and then she would be like, and Mom, you really need to make sure that you get a full 8 hours of sleep every night. And I'm like,
Thank you for taking care of me.
exactly. I'm like, I do.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Nice
she's
to
always
have
been like that.
nice to have somebody caring for you in that much
Oh, I know.
detail.
That's what I said. She'd make a great personal assistant because
Yeah.
you don't forget anything you're supposed to do when she's
She's
around.
going to tell you. Yeah.
There's a reminder about everything.
Yeah. Isaiah, he's very routine and schedule based. I just went and seen my parents this weekend, but my dad and my whole family, they get a kick out of this. But the very first time Isaiah rode a bicycle at my mom and dad's house, my dad just like was goofing off and rode with him on this little Paw Patrol bike with a honka honka, like a horn on the front. My
Yeah.
dad did that. And so Isaiah associated, if my dad ever rides a bicycle, he has to be riding this toddler size Paw
Right.
Patrol.
Paw Patrol.
Yes. And so that's what we do. We've been doing this for years. Isaiah's 7. My dad is still having to ride that little bicycle up and down my driveway.
Good for your dad.
He even went and bought an adult sized bicycle from a yard sale, like a nice one with gears and stuff. And if Isaiah sees it out, Isaiah will go and knock it over.
Yeah, like that's not your bicycle. What are you thinking?
He said,
Yeah.
Papa, get on the little blue bicycle.
Isn't that funny? And we do it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I mean. Like there were things that I would do for Leslie that made 0 sense, but I just did it because she needed me to do it in that moment.
And the joy afterwards, like you can't replicate, because
No,
you have to laugh at the
you
situation,
absolutely do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and not very many people get to have that experience.
Mm-mm. How does he do with, I know you're supposed to ask me questions, but I'm going to ask you this one.
No, it's fine.
How does he do with like abstract things like the Tooth Fairy or the Easter Bunny or Santa Claus or those types of things?
Yeah. He knows what Christmas is. Like he understands it. Like when we go to events that have Santa Claus, like my wife's work has a Christmas event and stuff. He understands he's supposed to go sit on Santa's lap, and he tells him, he says the same thing, tractor. It's
Yeah.
a tractor. It's a tractor every time. So he understands that. He loves the Easter egg hunt.
Okay.
So he does that. The Tooth Fairy, that's a Muppet Baby episode. So he
Okay.
associates that with animal's tooth being missing.
Okay. Okay.
And so that one may be the only one that's like completely off, but he understands Christmas. He understands Santa Claus, Easter eggs. He's all about it. Now Halloween, he's very particular. He only likes certain candies
Yeah.
in his bucket. So after a giant trunk or treat, Isaiah may have 2 Starbursts and a Dum Dum Sucker
Exactly.
in there, and he'll go around, if your bucket doesn't have what he wants, he just keeps on passing, and they're like, no, here, take some candy, and he's like, no,
right.
I don't.
Leslie would trade, like, here, take this candy. I don't like anything you have, but here, take this, because and she would just tell them, you don't have good candy here, and she would give them like good candy. I'm like, oh God, don't do that.
It was stressful at our church's trunk or treat, because like we'd want to go and play the game and see the booth, but also like we don't want to stand in line this whole time if we get up there and it doesn't have red Starburst or Dum Dum Suckers. No offense, but I don't have all night.
Exactly.
And so I would kind of sneak around the line and look up in the bucket and be like, nope, next one, keep going.
Exactly. Keep going. Yeah. Leslie
one
was funny. The Tooth Fairy was the first one that I ever really like. I figured out that she didn't have a real great grasp on abstract, like, because she's a crazy imagination. Like, she could tell stories, and just so I would have never thought that the Tooth Fairy was going to be a big deal. So when she, lost her tooth, okay, because your first baby, you have like the special pillow with their name on it, the little pocket and all that, and you're okay. We're going to put this under your pillow, and so I'm telling her, okay, and then the Tooth Fairy is going to come in. And she looked at me and she goes, what? And I said, the Tooth Fairy. And she goes, the Tooth Fairy is going to crawl under my pillow and steal my tooth. Yeah. And I went,
very literally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And she goes, no, thank you. And handed me that pillow and was like, there's no way I'm doing this. So for all of her life, I had to accept
that she wasn't going to have a Tooth Fairy moment.
She made me take it, because she would be asleep. There's no way she wanted something under her pillow. Same thing with the Easter Bunny. There was one year that, like what she got from the Easter Bunny was really big. So we put it in a laundry basket, and we rang the doorbell outside, before the Easter egg hunt and everything. And like, the Tooth Fairy must have left your basket here. Well, it's in a laundry basket. Yeah. And she looked around and she slammed the door and she was like, do not go outside. And we're like, what happened? And she said, did you see how big that basket was? The Easter Bunny has got to be huge. Like, that's all she could think of. It's like, there's this like 8-foot Easter Bunny outside.
Yeah, she was doing the math in her head. Like, this is a monster.
She was like, we are not going outside.
I wish Isaiah really doesn't care about, like, if you never told him Christmas was coming up, he would know, but like he doesn't care about, I guess he doesn't pay it any attention until we tell him, until we're like, hey buddy, Christmas is coming up. We're going to go see Santa Claus. Then he knows in his head what that means.
Then he knows. Right.
Yeah. But it's not like he's
Leslie, I think, associates hers with meals. Like, we know what we eat at Easter. We know what we eat at Thanksgiving. And then we know what we eat at Christmas. I think she really associates it like that way. But like, for Chris, she's always been a very practical person with her list. So in 2019, before all the pandemic stuff, on her Christmas list that year was she needed a new scarf. She wanted new gloves. and a bottle of hand sanitizer.
She's pretty easy to please.
As a joke, a lot of people in our family bought her hand sanitizer because, it was kind of funny. And boy, did that come in handy when, about March of
you needed it all
that next year. We sure did need it.
Y'all could have retired off of that probably.
Well, absolutely. It was so funny though, because she was like, I've got plenty.
Yeah, I'm good. I knew it was coming.
Mm-hmm.
Now that she's got her driver's license, is there like a next big fear or something you ever worry about, like in the back of your head? For me, like, is Isaiah ever going to drive again was always and is one, or is he ever going to drive?
Yeah.
Period. Now that she's gotten through that, is there something else that you
now
struggle
my
with?
biggest thing is like, because she can go so many places without me now.
Yeah.
So that is really my biggest fear, is for her to get into a situation that I'm not with her,
where she
that
can't
she can't get herself out of,
or,
and she can't communicate what she needs or what she means. Because there are still times that she will say things horribly incorrect.
Yeah.
And lots of times I'm there to kind of be like, oh, actually what she meant was this. So
yeah.
Exactly. Like there are times that happens. And so just the biggest fear is, and it's going to sound really weird, but is of her not needing me. And that's
not weird at all.
Yeah. Like, forever you kind of want them to not need you like that. But now for me, it's a big fear of her, like, not needing me. Because that's just, that's a land that I've never really explored. Never really thought of. So
my wife feels similar, because she said, like, even though Isaiah sometimes is a burden or whatever, in her head, she's like, he's always going to, like, I'm always going to be mommy.
Yeah.
To him, you're always going to have that feeling of someone needing you.
Yeah. And it's a very different, it's a different relationship. I have a very different relationship with Leslie than I do with my other kids.
Yeah.
I always will.
Yeah.
And I know that, but she needs me less and less. It's a different feeling, put it that way.
Yeah, for sure. Has there ever been any relationships that she's been in to where you had to get involved or be there for her when she did have an issue where she couldn't get out of?
Not necessarily. I've been there to where I've had to recognize. She never really recognized when somebody was being mean to her.
That's what I was getting at. Yeah.
Or bully her, and I've had to kind of step in and kind of get in the middle of some of those situations. She had a little girl one time invite her to a birthday party, and she was so excited she got invited to this girl's birthday party in middle school. We went and bought this girl a basketball. She was on the basketball team. Like, she was so excited. We get to the party and nobody's there. So the girl, she lied, like she did it to be mean.
That's awful.
So I was in the principal's office that Monday after all of that happened.
What grade was that, or how old was she?
That was 7th grade.
So that's just mean.
It was mean. It's very mean. And the principal was really great. He actually called that girl's parents in to talk with me about what their daughter did. So
that's some of my fears, because I feel like now, not to be like hover dad or whatever, but I'm Isaiah's bouncer. Like, I'm his bodyguard. I'm his, because he's not going to stick up for himself. Well, he will if he, like, in some situations, I guess.
Like if they're forced.
Yeah, he's tough. Like, you ain't going to hurt him, and he'll, if you're making him mad, he'll let you know. But as far as like, the bullying and stuff, I feel like, I don't want to say have to, but in a way, he wouldn't know any different in some situations. But there's been times where I've had to speak up and not necessarily put somebody in their place, but just give them a check. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I very much have had to do that several times. Yeah. And having a girl, it's so different. Again, a high functioning girl on the autism spectrum who, she went to every dance. She went to every, she went alone to most of them.
Yeah.
But, like you would see all of the little couples and stuff taking pictures. And then, there's us taking Leslie to do pictures by herself.
Yeah.
And I would catch like people like making fun and kind of not being very nice. And I'd make it very well known that I heard them and that, they should probably want to be better people than what they are.
Yeah. We had an issue like that come up recently, and unfortunately I was not there. My wife was, and she didn't say anything. But if I had been there, to me, it's not like wanting to make them feel bad, but at least let those people know, like, there's a world out there that you don't even know exists. And maybe take that into consideration next time before you make a jackleg of yourself,
Exactly. Exactly. I mean,
And
but that goes both ways. I've always kind of like, you don't ever know what this person's going
that's
through.
true. Yeah.
And you just, I don't know. I just always, but she has such a sweet soul that she just thinks everybody's wonderful and nice. And
Yeah.
that scares me also that,
Yeah.
I've always said, if this person pulled up in the white scary van and said, "Hey, I'm going out to
Yeah.
California to go to Pixar. Do you want to go with me?"
Yeah.
Sure.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That sounds great. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's
Yeah.
that's a whole different kind of fear because now she can go be places that I'm not.
She's
And
making choices without you there.
yes. So
Yeah. I think she's going to do great. Just judging on how you've raised her and everything you told me, it would worry me too. But I think she's in good hands.
yeah, she does make a lot of really good choices. She has an associate's degree, and now she's working towards her bachelor's degree. And
Nice.
she did live an entire year away from me and work for
That's
Disney.
that's a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, very much. One of her teachers reached out to me and she said, "Hey, I can remember talking to Leslie when she was like 9 years old." And I said, "Leslie, what are you going to do when you grow up?" And she said, "Well, I'm going to work for Disney." And
Sure
she
enough,
said,
she
"So,
did.
yeah."
Yeah.
So she's like, they're like, "Oh, we love seeing that she's doing it." So
Yeah. One of my good friends did an internship there for a couple years, and he really enjoyed it.
yeah, she's just around so many like very like-minded people that
Yeah.
think the same way that she does. And she made a lot of friends where she was working. They really embraced her and just they loved her. So that also made me feel pretty good being 747 miles away from her at most
Yeah.
times.
And
Yeah.
and getting that report. It's
Yeah. I
encouraging to
knew.
hear. It's
Yeah.
encouraging to hear like that she's doing as well as she has, because like some of the fears I have about Isaiah, you're making it sound like it is possible and it does happen, and I've heard stories like that,
Yep.
but never actually spoken to someone who's got a kid that's older and been through it all.
Yeah. I mean, you can't compare
No,
what
every
they
one of them's
do
different.
to typical kids that age and stuff, but she just really kind of hit her stride, and the support, definitely. We have a really supportive family.
Yeah,
It does help. But,
that's
anything she put her mind to that she wanted to do, I would try to figure out a way to make sure that she at least tried.
yeah,
If she tried it and she didn't like it or couldn't do it, no big deal. She at least tried.
that's awesome. We did that Isaiah with soccer. He didn't like it, and so we didn't force him.
Yep.
He had a meltdown a couple times, and he's like, "All right, got it, buddy, no more."
Yep.
Gymnastics has been a blessing. He loves that. That
Oh,
worked out.
yeah.
That worked out. And so it's a continued, like, that's the biggest one of the biggest struggles is like finding that next thing to keep them away from a tablet or a phone or just sitting inside,
Mm-hmm.
getting them out energy. Isaiah sensory seeks. So, getting him, like, it's always like, when's the next
Yeah.
camp? When's the next camp? When's the next
Right.
whatever it is, just keeping your wheels turning of what to keep his mind.
It's constant. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're always looking for that next thing.
Yeah.
That eventually
Uh,
kind of levels out as they get a little bit older. They lose a
yeah.
little bit of energy.
Yeah. It's encouraging to hear, especially 23, like she's
Yeah.
been through some of the stuff that I've always been afraid of for Isaiah.
Oh, yeah. She's
So
she's definitely done very well.
that's awesome. So we always end on two good notes. What's one great thing that she's done or succeeded at? And that I think the driver's test is the biggest one. Anything else that she's
Uh,
killing
I
it at
mean,
right now?
like getting accepted into the Disney college program was
That
a really big
yeah,
deal. That was,
yeah,
there weren't like they didn't take that many applicants, and so they chose her to be there. And I was very proud of her that she lived on her own for
that's
all that
huge.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's huge. That's
because I've
that's a
always said if
blessing.
they could put her in a bubble, like if I could put her in a bubble, she
That'd
could
be
she
all
could
right.
live on her own. And
Yeah,
that was sort of what they put her in a bubble for me. But
yeah,
she made all of her own money. That's always been a big thing. She even now she works in the meat department at Kroger. She slices meat at Kroger, and she's fantastic at it.
that's
But she
awesome.
makes all of her own money, and I'm very proud of her that again, she's doing things that I would have never dreamed.
Somebody's been watching over.
Absolutely. 20 years ago, if I'd have thought I'd been here telling you, that all of these things that she can do, I would have never dreamed it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so, what piece of advice would you give to that next parent who's just started down the path, just finding out, or maybe thinks something's going on, but hasn't got the official diagnosis? What one piece of advice would you give to the person who's
Well,
just getting the
just
news?
trust your gut. Number one, like you know, nobody knows your kid like you know your kid. And that comes along with if you think that they need further testing, if they need another diagnosis, trust your gut. If you think they can or can't do something, trust yourself to kind of push them to do
Yeah.
it. Like you're the one who can judge how far you can push them to do it, and push yourself to let them do
Yep.
it. That's been the biggest struggle with me is sometimes the thing that held her back the most was me, because I wasn't comfortable letting her do it.
Yeah.
And if you think they can do it, just let them do it.
That's awesome. I agree. I agree. The more they're exposed to,
Yeah.
even as hard or heartbreaking as it is at times, the better in the long run it turns out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, she surprised me her entire life. And that's what I tell her, even just the other day when she got her driver's license, like, you just
Yep.
keep surprising me, kid. You keep doing things that I would never dreamed you were going to do. So,
That's
and I think
awesome.
I've got lots of surprises ahead of us too.
That's awesome. And so where if somebody was wanting to get in touch with you for your support, advice, or just some shoulder to lean on, it's Kristi Bryant on Facebook.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's Kristi Bryant on Facebook. It'd be Kristi Click Bryant, because that was my maiden name.
Gotcha.
And then it's Kristi B77 on Instagram, and
Kristi
people can reach out.
B77 on
Mm-hmm.
Instagram. Gotcha.
Yeah.
And do y'all have any types of fundraisers, any donations, anything that you
No,
all?
I don't. We don't do any of that stuff anymore.
We don't either. Yeah.
I told you I was very heavily involved in Autism Speaks when she was younger,
Yeah.
and kind of moved away from that as she got older, because as she makes all these strides, you kind of get that stigma of like, well, there's nothing wrong with her,
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
So you kind of like, I kind of felt like I was like kind of out of that club, like the
I
better
know what you
she
mean.
did. Yeah, it's exactly how it felt. I have wonderful friends, wonderful connections through it,
Yep.
but it needed, that baton needed to be tossed.
That's
however,
it's like a graduation ceremony.
Yeah, very much
Yeah.
so. So yeah, that's what I'm also a Disney travel agent. I started that by Leslie used to get to go to Disney every year. I would make sure that we did that, because that was her one place where she could talk like a Disney person or dress
Yeah.
like a Disney
Just be
person every
yourself.
day, and
Yeah.
nobody noticed. So
Yeah.
I would like write about it a lot when we would come back from trips, and share a lot of tips and tricks to taking a kid on the spectrum. And so
That's
a travel agency read it, and
yeah.
he was like, "Hey, would you have any desire to do this and help plan these itineraries?" And
That's awesome.
so yeah, I started doing that. So
we may be using you sometime, because we've went back and forth with the idea of taking Isaiah for a couple years now, but never had the guts or
yeah,
to pull the trigger.
Leslie's bucket list. We've been I won't even tell you how many times we've been to Walt Disney World, because it's not normal.
Yeah.
But we're actually taking Leslie to Disneyland in like 10 days. That's her, like, it's a big like bucket list trip for her. She wants to go here so bad, so we're gonna make that come true here soon, and stay at the Pixar Hotel and
Wow.
go and see where all the magic started.
Very
for her
cool.
and
Very
for
cool.
all of us. So yeah,
Yes.
but if you ever, I have an email address that's associated with that one, and you could easily find me. It's disneydreamer1215@gmail.com.
Gotcha.
So you could always find me that way.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I've got that on the form you turned into.
Okay.
So awesome. Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate you. Appreciate you, Leslie. Tell her congratulations, and keep fighting the good fight. And she's killing it, and I know she's proud of you as well. So I appreciate your time very much.
Yeah, thank you, and reach out anytime.
I will. Kristi, thank you again, and have a great night.
Thanks, Trey.
Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in to the Superhero Parent Pod. I appreciate your support so much. Words cannot describe how much it means to me. Send this show to everyone who could benefit from it, and thank you so much. Again, we are on Apple, Spotify, Audible, Amazon, wherever you find your podcast at, we should be there. And in the show notes, in the show description, the application to be on the show is embedded in that. So if you yourself would like to come on the show and tell your story, if you know someone who would benefit from being on the show or could positively impact others from being on the show, feel free to send that application to them as well. Remember, strength comes through transparency. Okay, we are all in this together. Do not struggle alone. Do not feel like you are isolated. That is the devil. What the devil wants us to do is to isolate us and make us feel weak, and you are not that. So strength comes through transparency, and by being on the show and telling your story, you're not only strengthening yourself, but everyone else around you, people that you may never even come in contact with, could hear your story, and it may just brighten their day. All right, so that application is in the description and in the show notes. Feel free to send it to someone. Feel free to fill it out yourself if you feel like your child's story will benefit others. Someone from our team will reach out to you and let you know if you've been approved to be on the show or not. And again, thank you so much. Stay strong, stay healthy. Everybody keep moving in the right direction, and have a great rest of the day. God bless.